It's the sentence of the court as follows. Count 1 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Luke Hoyer. The court imposes a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Count 2 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Martin Duque Anquiano. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 3 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Gina Montalto. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 4 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Alexander Schachter. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 5 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Elena Petty. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 6 of the indictment for the murder in the first degree of Alyssa Al-Hadef. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. To count 7 of the indictment for the murder in the first degree of Nicholas Dworet, the court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 8 for the murder in the first degree of Helena Ramsey. The court imposes a life sentence, mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 9 for the murder in the first degree of Christopher Hickson. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 10 for the murder in the first degree of Carmen Schentrup. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 11 for the murder in the first degree of Aaron Feiss. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 12 for the murder in the first degree of Scott Beagle. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 13, the murder in the first degree of Meadow Pollock. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 14, for the murder in the first degree of Kara Loughran. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 15, for the murder in the first degree of Joaquin Oliver. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 16, for the murder in the first degree of Jamie Gutenberg. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 17, for the murder in the first degree of Peter Wang. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole.
This is one of the most haunting sentencing moments I've ever seen. Name after name, life after life. And the judge doesn't pause. She can't. Because there are 17 victims, most of them just kids. Each sentence is a final echo of a life stolen too soon. There's something chilling about how calm it is. But that calm is the weight of justice finally dropping.
Count 18, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Ashley Baez. The court imposes a life sentence with a minimum mandatory. Mr. Silverstein, it's 25 to life?
Yeah.
Or do I?
We're asking for life, Your Honor.
with a mandatory life sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 19, with the attempted murder, for the attempted murder of William Olson. The court imposes a life sentence with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute.
What makes this even more horrifying is that it didn't end with the 17 who died. These next counts, the attempted murders, represent people who lived, but will never be the same. Survivors who still carry bullets, trauma, nightmares. For each name here, there's a lifetime of surgeries, PTSD, grief, survivor's guilt. And yet, the system makes room to honor them legally. That matters. That says you count too.
Count 26, for the attempted murder, Mr. Silvershine, I see you're standing up. Did I
Just in case.
misspeak? Okay. Count 26, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Samantha Fuentes. I'm imposing a life sentence with a minimum mandatory of life under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 27, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Isabel Checker. The court imposes a life sentence with a minimum mandatory prison sentence of 20 years Florida State Prison under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 28, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Samantha Mayor. The court imposes a life sentence with a life minimum mandatory prison sentence under Florida 1020 life statute. Count 29, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Benjamin Wickender. The court imposes a life sentence with a minimum mandatory of life in prison under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 30, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Madeline Wilford. The court imposes a life sentence with a minimum mandatory of 20 years Florida State Prison under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 31, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Marian Kabachenko. The court imposes a life sentence with a 20-year minimum mandatory sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 32, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Stacy Lapel. The court imposes a life sentence with a 20-year minimum mandatory prison sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 33, for the attempted murder of Anthony Borges. The court imposes a life sentence with a mandatory life sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute. Count 34, for the attempted murder in the first degree of Kyle Lamont. The court imposes a life sentence with a minimum mandatory of life in prison under Florida's 1020 life statute.
This wasn't just a punishment. It was a total shutdown of any future for the defendant. The judge made sure of that. No profit, no comfort, every sentence running consecutively. Even the commissary funds will be seized until the last dollar of restitution is paid. The message, you will pay in every way we legally can, is not vengeance. It's accountability in its most complete form.
I am ordering that each and every count of the indictment run consecutive to one another.
Your Honor, on count 30, on count 30, that is at 25 to life, not 20 years.
Madeline Wilford.
Madeline Wilford.
Okay, excuse me. I misspoke. On count 30, there is alleged and proven the use of a firearm, discharge, and infliction of great bodily harm on Madeline Wilford. So I am correcting my previously imposed sentence. It is a life sentence with a mandatory life sentence under Florida's 1020 life statute. Again, I am ordering that all 34 counts of the indictment for each sentence is to run consecutive. That is, one after another. I'm ordering all mandatory court costs, all costs of prosecution. I'm ordering the costs of incarceration of the defendant by the Broward Sheriff's Office. I'm also imposing a public defender fee pursuant to Florida statute. I'm ordering restitution for each victim as previously named in counts 1 through 34 of the indictment, with the specific amount to be determined at a later time. I am ordering pursuant to 943-325, the defendant is to submit to 2 samples of his blood or less intrusive method for purposes of the DNA bank. Mr. Cruz, you are remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections to complete the mandatory life sentences imposed by the court. You have 30 days to appeal the judgment and sentence of the court. If you fail to appeal within the allotted time period, or you fail to contest the imposition of any of the fees or costs imposed during that 30-day period, you will waive said appeal. I am also granting the state's motion under the Florida equivalent of the Son of Sam law, which means, Mr. Cruz, you will not be able to benefit in any way as far as monies are concerned as to the crimes that you committed. In addition, I am going to order the Department of Corrections to garnish the commissary account of Mr. Cruz until all of restitution and costs of prosecution and costs of the Sheriff's Office are paid in full. The Department of Corrections, I don't know where you're going, but they can assign that duty to their local office, where they will charge an applicable fee and garnish your commissary until all of these amounts that I have previously ordered are paid in full, specifically the costs of the sheriff, the state, and any rest.
Watching this, you realize no sentence could ever truly match what was taken. These were children, teachers, people just going about their day. And yet, this court did what it could. It said every life mattered. Every injury mattered. And there will be no forgetting. No leniency. Just a record written in 34 counts that says we saw what happened. And we responded. That matters.